Hey there, clarinetophiles and filettes. It's been a while since we've done some videos, but boy, it's just been busy here and all kinds of trips and things and interruptions that have prevented it. But here we are, and I'd like to address this question that a customer had, or that a viewer had, about how to play the high register, which is a very, very good question. And so I thought I'd start by breaking it into two parts. First, talking about the equipment that's needed to do it, because we want to do the high register, we want to do it with ease, so we don't want to be struggling, fighting with our equipment. So what's going to be required of the equipment? And the second part would be exactly what has to happen behind our nose to make everything work best, because even if we have good equipment, if we do the wrong things behind our nose, then it's not going to work very well. So what do we need in clarinet equipment that's going to make our job a lot easier, and actually also help us play it correctly in the process? Because, you know, if the equipment is bad or defective in some way, it'll force you into bad habits, and sometimes if you do that long enough, it's very hard to get out of it. Well, it's very simple. It's not rocket science. First of all, I recommend a mouthpiece that's not crooked. The facings are not crooked. In other words, they have symmetrical or the same rails. Now, you can take an open mouthpiece or a closed mouthpiece or a long facing or a short facing. It doesn't matter as long as the reed is matched up to it and well balanced. Now, a well balanced reed is much easier to achieve on a symmetrical facing mouthpiece. So those two things together, a well balanced reed and a symmetrically faced mouthpiece, those are essential to having a lot of ease, a lot of security and confidence in playing the high register. What do you not do, and what do most people commonly do? Well, one of the things they most commonly do is bite when they play the clarinet in general, and when they try to play the high register, they try to bite harder, and that's not a good idea. Another thing that they try to do is to play hard reeds, really hard reeds, thinking that that's what's required to play the high register. Well, you have to have a reed of adequate strength, but, you know, if the reed is poorly balanced and very slow in response, it's not going to yield good results up there, and it's going to give you bad habits, having to bite in order to make the reed speak and respond and clarify the sound, and that's never any good. One of the other things, along with clamping down in the chops, biting down the reed, squeezing it, trying to get the pitch up, is that the clarinetists often flatten out the soft palate. In other words, they what people call closing the throat, but you really don't close the throat. What happens is the soft palate, you know, that part right up there that's real flexible, that collapses and pushes down instead of kind of balloons up, relaxes and balloons up. If anything, the soft palate should open up. We're going to have a few drawings to show you later about that. And then they drop their air as well. So all those things are counterproductive. Biting, closing the throat, or collapsing of the soft palate, playing hard reeds, especially if they're poorly balanced reeds, and dropping your air column. All those things really destroy the high register. Oh, you may get the high register out by biting, but it's going to probably be sharp, or it will be very pinched and flexible and strident. And none of those things anybody wants to hear. They'd rather you play it an octave lower. All right, now we've discussed what not to do, but what positive things can we do behind our nose to make the high register work better? Well, first of all, we need to play extremely well-balanced reeds, just as we've talked about. Those notes come out more dependably, come out with more clarity, and with more flexibility and beauty if the reed is really well-balanced. Very, very important. So if you don't know how to do that, you better learn, okay? Otherwise, you're going to find inconsistency in your attempts to play the high register. The other thing is to play a reed, of course, adequate strength. We've already talked about that. But the worst thing that clarinetists do is that they bite. Now, you may say, gee, I really need a little more pressure on the reed to control the reed for the high register. Okay, that's fine. If you need a little more pressure, the last thing you should do is be clamping down with the jaw, squeezing on that reed, because it pinches the reed down on the facing and actually decreases the amplitude of the reed's vibrational patterns, when you really need increased freedom, especially at the tip of the reed, in order to play those high notes. Remember, they're vibrating at twice the speed of pitches an octave lower, so they really need a lot of room. So what to do in adding pressure? Well, what you do is you keep your armature fixed into that fixed opening like I've talked about in previous videos, and you make sure that the thumb is well snugged. You might want to feel like you're lifting a little more. It'll be very subtle, but that lifting the horn to the face, bringing the horn to the face, will push the tip of the reed past the pressure point, so it'll have more freedom to vibrate. At the same time, the lifting also puts a little more pressure on the reed, gives you a little more control of it. So if you have to control the reed, snug, bring the horn to the face, don't bring the face to the horn. Very important. The other thing is to make sure that the soft palate stays arched up very high. And I think I have a few drawings so you can see all that. And then also, of very, very great importance is what happens with the tongue, with the voicing. Now, the middle of the tongue, or the back of the tongue, what you might call the back toward the middle, will say arched, okay? But the tip area of the tongue, let's say the first third of the tongue, really has to move down and flat in the mouth, especially if you're trying to play notes, say, a good example would be if you're trying to slur, say, from high E to high A. You'll notice that in order to play high E and go to high A, you'll notice that the very tip area of the tongue will actually drop down and flatten out, so the tongue will have a kind of S shape, but you're creating more space for the amplitude of the reed. And if the tongue is up there close to the reed, in fact, you can get a high note playing really well and have the tongue down there low, the front of the tongue there low in the mouth, and you bring it up toward the tip and the note will stop. So you've got to do the right things with the tongue. Now, how much? Well, it's like riding a bicycle. You have to feel it out, and you have to be sensitive. The worst thing you can do is to try to force something. The whole idea is to begin to feel the compression inside the mouth that the reed is giving you from trying to vibrate in a certain way, and go with that, relax with that, and give the clarinet room to work for you. So it's not so much like you're doing it, it's more like you're learning how to get out of the way. Yeah, that's it. There is one more thing, however, and I think it can be understood in a simple analogy. You know, when you go to Denver, when you go to a high altitude area, you're not used to it, and it's a little breathtaking. You run out of air real quick. So, but by being there, you get more and more accustomed to it, so that you feel perfectly normal. Well, the high register is a lot that way. You know, lots of people don't like to hear the high register, and lots of people don't like to practice it because it's not the most pleasant thing to work on. But in order to do the high register well, you have to learn to live up there for a while. So practicing sustained high notes, practicing, beautiful slow melodies, very familiar folk songs or anything like that, practicing them in the high register begins to get the sensitivity and to get the proper reaction and stuff that you need in order to play that high register well. You're not going to play the high register well if you don't really practice it and spend some time up there. So with all those things, I'm going to share that with you and ask you to work on that and see if putting all those things together won't significantly improve the beauty and the security of your high tones. If you or a friend is in need of a great B-flat clarinet or bass clarinet, drop by our website and take a look at our super Christmas sale at www.ridenourclarinetproducts.com. And as always, thanks for watching.